Hey folks, so today I want to talk to you about voting and elections. It's been a moment since my last check-in. I know I definitely planned on being more consistent with my check-ins, but the truth is that I am not a robot, right? I'm not a machine, and that's a good thing. Um, I'm a human being, I'm alive, I'm dynamic, and I have to adapt. So things haven't gone exactly as planned, but trust that I am constantly moving forward, and that's the vibe. Um, yeah, a lot going on, but today again we're talking about voting and elections. So just a couple thoughts, a couple takeaways. First off, should you even vote? Now, in this, duopoly, this two-party system, um, I know a lot of people have felt disenfranchised, like neither party represents them, um, like it's all a game that we can't win, and um, there's a strong argument to not vote, right? I've been in that camp of not voting, and not voting was my vote, and I don't regret that. In fact, one major election, I'm a December baby, so I missed one major election in my life. The next one, I didn't vote, no regrets, wouldn't have changed anything in hindsight. And the election after that, again, another major one, I did vote, and I actually felt regret, following my intuition. I felt that I did a lesser evil vote, and I felt like my choice didn't truly reflect what I was feeling and what I was thinking inside. So I'm saying all that because I understand those who choose to not vote and not participate, right? In many ways, you could say, oh, your vote doesn't count if you don't vote, or you're just voting for this person. Well, in some ways, not voting is your vote, right? You're saying I'm with this camp of people not voting. One of the issues with that, however, is that you're also putting yourself in the camp of people who are completely apathetic, who really don't care, who have no interest in society and community. So you're putting yourself in that camp. And another issue I have with it is that I ask myself, what would those opposed to my betterment, what would they want? What would they desire? And you could say, well, they want you to vote. They want you to appease you and make you feel like your voice is heard, and then keep doing what they're doing anyway. That there's a strong argument for that. But I wouldn't be surprised if they would like it even more if I didn't even participate. Here's the thing that so two other thoughts about voting or not voting. So first off, there are places and periods in time where people cannot vote. Not long ago in our country, women couldn't vote. Anybody other than white males could not vote, right? And it took a lot to even get to this point where we even have access to the polls. And testament to how powerful voting can be, there are still currently major voter disenfranchisement, campaigns. There are major efforts to discourage people and keep people away from the voting polls. Now, again, it's rigged, it's corrupt, all this other stuff. Yes, perhaps, but there's something to be said for letting your voice be heard. But also, it's like the more people participate, the more you engage in the system, um, and go work at the polls and see how it works and get involved. The more ripple effect that your voice and your power has. Now, trust me, I understand the other side. Chomsky always said, like, you don't reform a tyranny, you abolish it, right? So I understand the strong argument to just not even participate in this, but you're not participating in a rigged system. You're participating in society. You're participating in community, right? Now, it being rigged is a separate factor to be addressed as well. But again, I feel like even if you lose, even if things don't go your way, the chance for your voice to be heard and to be part of a group of people who share similar ideals for a better world, I think that alone is worth it. In addition, there are people, again, who have fought and died for a chance to have their voice be heard. And there's still places where people cannot vote, and it's a really big deal. So I would say don't take that for granted. So yes, that's reason number one. I suggest that you get out and vote. Reason number two, I would say, is that there's a lot more on the line than just the presidential election, right? So I encourage you to make your voting plan. And again, I ask myself, okay, path of least resistance, go with the flow, don't make things more difficult on yourself. So the easy thing to do is just not vote, right? But sometimes the other side of that coin is that action is necessary. So with action being necessary, I recommend that you do a little research, see who might be on your ballot, make sure you have your voting plan, know where you're going to vote, get registered, all that stuff, and get involved. And again, there's a lot more in line than just the presidential campaign. The presidential campaign might be huge, more or less, depending on where you live. You might be in a swing area or whatever the case is, but there's also many other things on the ballot for you to consider. So again, I recommend you get involved. My last thing about voting is, and this is, not everybody would agree with me on this per se, but I really, again, there's something in me that's very against bullying. And as an empath, I understand that everybody has their own experience. So therefore, I really stay away from, let's not ye be judged, right? So I'm not going to judge somebody's character simply on who they vote. I may have a critique of their actions. I may have a discussion with them and question their logic. But ultimately, everybody has their own individual experience that's formed throughout their life. It formed when they were children. It was created, through generations in their family, through experiences their parents and grandfathers and grandparents and ancestors had. So I'm really not upset. I'm really not upset when somebody votes any which way if they're being honest with themselves. On the other side of that coin, I see it as an opportunity to invite discussion. We're in a nation divided here. And I think we were born a nation divided. And in some ways, it seems more divided than ever. But again, that's just, I think, because we have more access to information and we're so oversaturated. And, I remember learning about the Civil War and hearing how family members would kill each other. And it seemed unbelievable, unimaginable. And now in this modern age, you're like, oh, okay, I'm witnessing it. I see how this is possible. And again, I wouldn't say that now is better or worse than, during the World Wars, Civil Wars, Vietnam, other war eras. But what I would say is absolutely we have much more access to information. It's just harder to unplug. As tough as things were, and again, I wasn't alive for all this, but I was alive in the 80s and 90s where information exchange was a little different. And, as bad as things were, you would still go home and unplug and sit at the dinner table with your family and have a meal. And now it's like you can't unplug. Now we're constantly plugged in and we're bombarded with information and we're just on edge. We're in this fight or flight stage. So again, I'm saying all that because I feel like we are in a nation divided, perhaps now more than ever. And I'm always wary and cautious and aware of any type of divide and conquer rhetoric. So all this stuff that makes you want to throw your neighbor out, I invite you to question those beliefs in yourself and rather invite a discussion. Again, with this nation divided, one of my first thoughts is I wish that maybe if we weren't ranked 41st in global education, maybe we'd be having better discussions here. Again, education is a whole other story. It has its flaws and, a lot of us have been disheartened by our education system. But one thing I've learned from working in the teaching system is that it's about developing young minds, right? There's a lot of importance in knowing how to read and knowing how to comprehend information and knowing how to interpret and do basic math problems and problem solve, right? And we lack this ability in our modern discourse. Right? So again, rather than allow yourself to be divided and just write off your neighbor, maybe try to understand, hey, you know what? I think this opponent is heinous. I think they're bad for society. I think they're bad for the world. Rather than just assume their intentions, maybe have a discussion and say, okay, what's your goal? Why are you drawn to this person? Okay, maybe I disagree with your motives, but why do you want this? Why do you want that? What's your intention here? What's the world? Is there a place where we could meet and actually create something better? In a world where both of us have to coexist, what would that look like? How can we create that? Right? And I think that's how we have better discussions. And it's also, you know, we can feel so stuck sometimes. It's one of my biggest, I don't know, pet peeves. But you know, I get the claustrophobic feeling of being stuck. I really just don't like being stuck, and I don't want other people to be stuck. And I see a society that's stuck. I see people that are stuck, and sometimes it's like you can't even imagine a better world when you're stuck. But trust me, we have a lot to learn. So let's engage in these conversations. Again, main takeaways: vote because you can. You know, sometimes I'd vote strategically, but I'd encourage you to be yourself and follow your heart. Get involved. You know, talk to your neighbors, talk to your family, read more books. If you feel like you don't have enough information, get more information. Right? So number one is get involved, participate, vote. Number two is realize there's a lot more on the line than just choice A or B in a presidential election. There's a lot of things at stake in an election cycle. So learn what these things are, and don't let them play you to think that your voice doesn't matter. And number three, again, let's keep it civil. And you know, it's hard to keep it civil when somebody's you know, stepping on your throat. But you know, again, I'm encouraging you to use your higher thought process. And maybe you can't have a civil discussion with everybody, but there are plenty of people willing to engage, and that's where we grow, and that's where progress is made. So again, get involved, think about the world that you want, and don't get played to think that your voice doesn't matter. I love you all. Peace.